Well, welcome to chapter 10. In chapter 10, we're going to be learning third declension. We're going to be learning something called the master case ending chart. And we're going to be learning the last two noun rules. So this is a watershed chapter in the grammar. And when we're done here, we're going to know all three declensions. And we're going to know almost all noun and adjective forms you're ever going to meet. So this is a great chapter to get under our belt. It's a chapter that historically has caused people some concerns. It's been a hard chapter, but especially in the third edition of the grammar, and even in the second, I started finding ways to make it easier and easier. And now, what was for me one of the hardest chapters, most people would say, oh, that's no big deal. So if you've been learning Greek before and you're learning it again, and you're coming to this chapter with some fear, don't worry about it. It's not that hard, as long as you've been learning your case endings properly. Okay. Third declension. What are the declensions? Well, first declension are stems ending in alpha or eta. Second declension are stems ending in omicron. Third declension stems are stems ending in a consonant. So it's called the consonantal declension, consonantal stems. And remember, it doesn't matter what declension a word is in terms of its meaning. If a word could be more than one declension, which it can't, but if it could, it wouldn't change its meaning at all. It would just change its form. So we're dealing here with issues of form, not meaning. The reason that some people have struggled with third declension forms in the past is because when you first look at the paradigm, they can look a little scary because they look really different to some people from the paradigms you're used to. And the reason for that is because the stem ends in a consonant and certain things are happening because of that consonant. But if you've been learning your true case endings and what they really are, third declension is not going to be that big of a deal. There are three new case endings that we'll introduce for third declension, and some other ones that are slightly different from first and second, but it's not going to be a big deal if you've been learning your true case endings. And so if you're not sure what those case endings are, you should go back and review before you continue. Okay? All right. Let me give you 4 hints. And what I found over the years is that if you can get these 4 hints down, then everything in the rest of the chapter is commentary. Everything else is just how do these 4 hints show themselves in the different paradigms and the different stems. So focus on these 4, okay? And the chapter's not going to be hard. Hint number 1, you've got to pay attention to the stem of a third declension word. And the reason for that is the stem is usually changed in the nominative singular, which is the vocabulary form. In other words, if you think that the nominative singular, the vocabulary form, is the basic form of a third declension word, the third declension is going to be miserable because it's just going to be weird. But what you have to be able to do is to find the stem of the word. And if you can find the stem, you'll understand the third declension is very, very regular. Let me give you an example. There is a word sark, sigma, alpha, rho, kappa. It's a feminine third declension. It means flesh, among other things. And the stem of the word is sark. Now, what is the normal nominative singular ending, like in a word like logos? Well, it's sigma, isn't it? Well, what happens when you put a sigma onto the stem sark? Say it out loud. Well, it's sarks. Okay, don't pause between the cap and the sigma. Make it smooth. Well, it's sarks, isn't it? Well, how do we write the x sound? We write it as a x, don't we? You see, the lexical form of this word is sarks, sigma, alpha, rho, x. And if you think that sarks is the basic form, you're not going to be able to get the rest of the paradigm. But if you know that the stem is actually sark, sigma, alpha, rho, kappa, then the rest of the paradigm is going to be easy. Well, how do you get to the stem? It's easy. You always memorize the genitive singular. In other words, when you're memorizing a vocabulary, you've been doing this for first and second, and it's not been a big deal because they're pretty consistent patterns. Third declension words, it's a really big deal. You're going to memorize this word as sarks with a c, then the genitive singulars sarkos, kappa, omicron, sigma, and then hey. The hey tells you it's feminine. Here's how you find the stem of any third declension. You memorize the genitive and you drop off the omicron sigma, more about that in a second, and that's your stem, okay? So hint number 1 is you always have to memorize the stems of these words. You'll memorize them when you do your vocabulary work because you'll be memorizing nominative and genitive singular, sarc, sarcos. Drop off the omicron sigma, there's the stem of the word, okay? So you got to know your stems in third declensions. All the other forms in the paradigm are taken off of the stem, not the lexical form, not the nominative singular. Okay. Second hint. Hint number 2 is that whatever happens in the nominative singular also happens in the dative plural. Think what happened to the stem sarc. The kappa sigma gets rewritten as a xi, sarx, okay? Well, the reason that the dative plural is going to act like the nominative singular is that the dative plural case ending is sigma iota. Now, I know in first and second declension you memorized iota sigma. Well, just pretend it's the same ending flipped, okay? It's iota sigma in first and second declension. It's sigma iota in third declension. Okay, piece of cake, right? And so, but what's happening is that the sigma is coming up against the kappa. And so the very same thing that happened in the nominative singular is going to happen in the dative plural. So the dative plural form of this word is sarxi, sigma alpha rho xi iota. Okay, but it's the same change, same morphological change is happening in the dative plural. So whatever happens in the nominative singular, kappa sigma going to xi in this case, is going to happen in the dative plural because both case settings start with a sigma. Okay. Third hint. When you have a nu that's followed by a sigma, the nu drops out. In other words, if you try to say ns, that little pause between ns, it's called hiatus. And Greeks don't like hiatus, and they'll do anything they can to get rid of them. And so what they did, they just dropped out the nus. So take, for example, the stem tin, tau iota nu. Go like, for example, to the genitive plural, you get tinon, perfectly regular. But what's going to happen in the nominative singular? Well, you have tin plus sigma. The nu drops out, and the form is tis, tau iota sigma. And this is the vocabulary form you memorize, tis. Okay. Now, if you think that tis is the basic form, then when you get to the other forms in the paradigm, they're not going to make any sense. Okay, because there's no nu in tis. But you got to think, what's the genitive? Well, the genitive is tinas, tau iota nu omicron sigma. Drop off the omicron sigma, you get the stem tin. Okay, you go to the dative plural. What's going to happen? Tin plus c goes to tinsi, goes to tissi. Nus drop out before sigma. So basic morphological change. The fourth hint has to do with the letter tau. And the basic rule is that Greeks did not like to end a word in tau. There was something about a t sound at the end of a word that it didn't sit right with them. And so they drop it out. The side part of the rule is that just like the nu, if a tau is followed by a sigma, the tau drops off as well. Okay, let's take the stem onomat. This is the stem that means name in Greek. Go to the genitive plural, you got onomaton, no big deal. But what happens when you go to the nominative singular, when you go to the lexical form? What is the case ending in the neuter nominative singular? Well, before you answer that, think about the article. The article is ha, hey. It doesn't go to ton, does it, like ergon does? There's no case ending used in the article. Okay, the same thing is going to happen with onomat words. Same thing is going to happen with third declension neuters. There is no case ending in the nominative singular. So you have onomat is going to go to onoma, right? Towels don't stand at the end, so it drops off. The lexical form is onoma. You will memorize the form as onoma onomatos. See, there's the tau before the omicron sigma, the genitive singular ending. And you're going to memorize from that the stem is onomat. Go to the dative plural, what's going to happen? Tau's drop off before sigma, you get onomacy. Okay? So these are the hints, and like I said, everything after this is just commentary. Everything after this is just a discussion of how these hints play out. You got to know the stem. All the forms of the word are built off of the stem. They are not built off of the nominative singular, off the lexical form. Secondly, whatever happens in the nominative singular is going to happen in the dative plural because both case settings start with sigma. Hint number 3, news drop off before sigma. Hint number 4, taus drop off when they're at the end of a word or when they're followed by a sigma, okay? So those are the 4 hints. So let's work through a paradigm and let's see how this is going to work out. And I'm going to start with the stem sark. Okay, this sark, as I said, is the stem that means flesh. And if you could cover up the answers, okay, that it's easier for this process. And if you're looking at your textbook, cover up the answers. And let's just walk our way through this word. I think you'll find that you can figure it out. Well, you're going to have to learn some new case endings, but other than that, you can figure it out. Okay, you're going to memorize the form as sarx, sarkos, hey. Okay, what does that tell you? Well, starting right to left, it tells you it's feminine. Going to the genitive singular, it tells you that the stem is sark, ending in a kappa. And it tells you that the nominative singular form is sarx. Now, you know the true case ending is a sigma. It joined with a kappa. It's rewritten as a xi. Okay? Piece of cake. Go to the genitive singular. What is it? Well, you memorized it as sarkos, so you know it's sarkos. This is the first of the new case endings in the third declension. The genitive singular case ending is omicron sigma. Now, that's not completely new, isn't it? I mean, where else have you seen a sigma? Well, all right, first declension can use, they always have a sigma in the genitive singular. Graphes and horas, right? So here you got an omicron in front of it, a little different. Now, if you saw sarkos, what is it? Well, if you don't know your memory work, you could look at it and go, well, that could be a nominative singular second declension masculine, right? So how will you know that sarkos is not that, but is a genitive singular from a third declension stem? Memory work. It's the only answer on that one. You could go to sarkos and look it up in lexicon. You're not going to find it. And that would be the clue that's not the lexical form. But in the genitive singular, the case ending is omicron sigma, and it just hooks onto sark, and you get sarkos. Not a big deal. Okay, without looking, what's the dative singular going to be? Well, what was the dative singular case ending in first and second declension? It's an iota, right? Now, we know that in the first and second declension, the iota subscripted. Why did it subscript? Well, because it subscripts if possible. When is it possible? If the preceding letter is a long vowel. Well, if you have a third declension stem, is the preceding letter a long vowel? No, it's a consonant. So you have exactly the same case ending. The iota just doesn't subscript, okay? So you get sarki. But it's exactly the same case ending as lago and hora and ergo, okay? It just doesn't subscript. Same case ending. It's in the iota. Okay, what about an accusative singular? Well, this is a new case ending. It's the alpha. And so third declensions in the accusative singular use alpha as their case ending, and so you get sarka. So you would not have been able to guess that. So what's going on in the singular? It's sarx, sarkos, sarki, sarka. Okay? Okay, look at the paradigm, and you can see how that works out. I'm going a little slowly here, but I want you to see that if you know the case endings, this is not hard. There's just some changes going on, but you can do this. Okay, let's switch to the plural. And again, don't look yet. The form, the stem is sark. Okay, there's a new case ending that's used in the nominative plural. It's epsilon sigma. It was always easy for me to memorize epsilon sigma. In English, es is plural for some reason. So in the nominative plural form of sarx is sarkes. Okay? Go to the genitive, it's always own, right? Always. So it's sarcone. All right. Let's get to the dative. As I said earlier, the dative plural ending in the first and second declension is iota sigma. Third declension just flips it. Don't think of it as a new case ending. Just flip the one you're used to. But then you've got a sigma up against the kappa. What happened in the nominative? Kappa sigma go to xi. So the dative plural is sarxi. And the nu that's in parentheses in the paradigm is your nu movable. And then finally, what's the accusative plural ending? And again, you got to fudge a little bit on this. It's alpha sigma. It's technically a new case setting, but you've seen alpha sigma as an accusative plural ending before, haven't you? Where? Yeah, first declensions. It's graphos or horas. Now, in the case of the first and second declension, the alpha is part of the stem, and the third declension is part of the case setting. But I never had any trouble memorizing alpha sigma as a accusative plural ending because of the connection. So, sarx, sarka, sarki, sarka, and in the plural, sarkes, sarcone, sarxi, and sarkas. Piece of cake, huh? That's not hard to do at all. So take a look at your paradigm. Make sure you understand what's happening. And for reasons you'll see later on, you need to know the patterns. That's what's so important here. Third declension stems are categorized based on the final consonant. And so kappa stems are all going to behave like sarks, and there's actually more similarities to look at in a bit. But there are a few other categories of stems that you need to be aware of. One of those are stems ending in mot, mu alpha tau. Now, gender is a hard thing in third declension. If just looking at sarks, you can't tell whether it's masculine, feminine, or neuter. But there are some patterns, and one of those patterns is all stems ending in mot are neuter. Okay, that's great news, okay? So this is the stem onomat. We learned earlier that it's the Greek word for name. And because it ends in mot, we know it's neuter, even without memorizing it as neuter. Okay, let's walk through the paradigm. What do you think it would be? Well, what is the nominative singular case ending for third declension neuters? Well, it's nothing, isn't it? So you have onomat with no case ending, and taus can't stand at the end of the word, so you go to onoma. Okay, we looked at this. Onoma. You go to the genitive, you stick the same old case ending on omicron sigma, and you get onomatos. Okay? In the dative, you get what? Onomati. Very good. The iota doesn't subscript. And accusative singular, well, because this is a neuter, you know it's going to be the same as the nominative. So it's onoma. Okay? Let's go into the plural. What is the nominative and accusative plural neuter case ending? Well, it's an alpha. And we're used to that from ergon type words, aren't we? And so you get onomata. What's going to be the genitive plural? Well, it's own. It's always own, so it's onomaton. And what is the dative plural? Well, it's C, but what happens to taus before sigmas? They drop out, don't they? And so you get anomacy with a new movable. See, here's what's important with what you just did, if you were able to follow that with me. Instead of just memorizing all these new paradigms, you saw how the true case endings, and the three new ones that we've had to learn, work their way out with kappa stems and in mot stems. And it's just critical because what you're going to find is that there's other words that are like kappa stems. All right? And so the patterns that we learned with sark kind of stems are going to show up in other stems. There's all kinds of sub-patterns in the third declension. And if you're just going to try to memorize all of them, you're going to have a lot to memorize. But if you can see the patterns, it gets much, much easier. Let me do one other category of word, and you'll see what I'm talking about. This is the nu stems. These are stems that end in nu. And so we'll take the stem tin, tau iota nu. Okay, add on your nominative singular ending, which is a sigma. What's it going to be? Well, it's going to be tis, isn't it? The nu drops out before sigma. And so the lexical form of this word is tis. Genitive singular, tinos, piece of cake, right? Dative singular, got that iota, tini, not a big deal. Accusative singular, it's a case ending for third declensions. It's an alpha, so you go to tina, all right? So it's tis, tinos, tina, tina. What's going to happen in the plural? Well, it's tines, tinon. Now we get the dative plural. What happened in the nominative singular? Oh, the nu dropped off before sigma. You get tisi with a nu movable. And in the accusative plural, you get tinus. All right, without the sigma. Okay, if you can go through that pattern with me, you're doing great. So you should be really, really encouraged. Let's look at the word haste. Haste is the Greek word for one. I can still remember in first year Greek raising my hand and asking the teacher what the plural form of haste was. After the laughter subsided, she reminded me that one doesn't have a plural. One only has a singular. Oh, one of my dumber questions I asked. Anyway, the word is haste, and it's a 3-1-3 adjective. What that means is that the masculine follows the third declension, the feminine follows the first declension, and the neuter follows the third, 3-1-3. And it gets kind of weird in the nominative singular masculine. If you have the root of the stem of this word is hen, and you add the sigma, the nu drops off, and you get hes. But what happens is something called compensatory lengthening. What happens in Greek sometimes is if you lose something, the word compensates by doing something different. And in this case, the epsilon compensates by lengthening to the diphthong epsilon iota. So the nominative singular masculine form, the lexical form, is haste, and you're not going to be able to look at that and tell it comes from hen. But if you get to the genitive, it's henos, right? Well, you're not going to get from haste to henos. You're only going to get to the henos from the stem hen, right? So you know this word as haste. You know it's from the stem hen. So the nominative, the genitive singular is straightforward. It's henos, dative heni, accusative hena. If you switch over to the neuter, you have the stem hen, and what is true of neuters in the third declension, no case ending is used, so you have hen. But you already know what the genitive and dative singulars are, because they have to be the same as the masculine, the noun rule. So it's hen, henos, heni, and then you get to the accusative singular. It has to be the same as the nominative singular, so the accusative singular is hen. Did you follow all that? Those are all the noun rules at play. When it comes to the feminine, it simply shifts to a first declension stem, mia, that goes to mia, mias, mia, mion, as you go through the pattern. So that's the pattern for the Greek word for meaning one. All right, a lot of paradigms in this chapter, aren't there? Okay, we now come to, drum roll please, the master case ending chart. There are things in language learning that if you don't learn them, it's not a big deal. You can get away with it. This isn't one of those things, okay? Master case ending chart is just, along with the definite article, the chart that you have to know. If you don't know this chart, you're dead in the water. You might as well give up and go learn Hebrew, I guess. But you just got to know the master case ending chart. You have to know it left to right, right to left, top to bottom, bottom to top. But you also need to be able to know every square where there's a nu, and every square where there's a sigma, and every square where there's an iota. It's so important, you all, that you know the master case ending chart. And, you've maybe been learning these in connection with a preceding vowel or even in conjunction with a paradigmatic word like logos or ergon. But, man, you've got to know these case endings. And you got to know them perfectly. And the reason you have to know them random access is we're at a point now where you're going to see a form that's going to have a nu. And you're going to have to go, okay, nu. Where do the nus occur? And you simply have to know this, all right? So, you got to know these things. As you go through the chart, the first column is second declension masculine, then first declension feminine, then second declension neuter, and then a spacer, and then masculine or feminine third declension. And the third declension masculine and feminine forms are usually identical. And then the final column is third declension neuter. All right. So the endings as you go across are sigma like logos, or nothing, or nu like ergon, sigma like tis, or nothing like anima. Okay. Genitive singulars are upsilon, sigma, upsilon, and then a third declension, it's omicron sigma. In the dative singulars, it's blissfully iota all the way across, piece of cake. In the accusative singular, it's nu, nu, nu. And then when you get into the third declension, the ending that you've learned is an alpha, like sarka. But sometimes a third declension form will pick up the nu. And so you need to learn that the accusative singular ending in the third declension for masculine, feminine forms is either alpha or nu. And then in the accusative singular neuter, the case ending is nothing. See how the chart works? All right. Flip over to the plural forms, and it's iota, iota, alpha, swallowing up the final stem vowel. And in the third declension, it's epsilon, sigma, or alpha. The genitive plural is blissfully owned all the way across. The dative plural is iota, sigma in the first and second declension. Flip it with a new movable in the third declension, you get a sigma iota. And in the accusative plural, it's upsilon sigma, sigma, or alpha, swallowing up the final vowel. In the third declension, it's alpha sigma, or again, an alpha. All right. Those are just critical case endings, and you just have to know them. And what I enjoy doing in class is giving students speed quizzes. In fact, if you go to the online class on the website, there's a downloadable quiz, and all it is the boxes. Nothing's filled in. And what I do with my students, I initially start them, give them 2 minutes, say fill it out. And then I'll give them 45 minutes. And you can get down to 20 seconds. And then if I had a particularly bad night the night before, I might have them fill it out right to left, or bottom to top, or randomly. Like, where are all the news? Okay, where are all the iotas? I'll fill out everything else, that kind of stuff. But, download the form and then just quiz yourself over and over and over again. You just really need to know the master case ending charts. And so you need to go to it. The book does show you what the master case ending chart looks like if you have the preceding vowel. Sometimes the vowel helps certain people memorize the case endings. So, hey, whatever works, it works. But you need to know what those case endings are. So that's the master case ending chart, and you got to know it really, really well. Otherwise, you can be memorizing paradigms and reviewing them for the rest of your life. Okay, let's move on, and let me say just a couple things about third declension. Let me give you a couple of hints about third declensions. And I think I've said or alluded to them already. Number one, make sure you memorize not only the lexical form, the nominative singular, but memorize the genitive singular, which will show you the root, and memorize the article. Okay, you've got to do that in your memory work. Secondly, there are not nearly as many gender patterns in third declension as there are in first and second, but there are some patterns, and one of the main ones is mot, and all stems ending in mot are going to be neuter. And third, don't forget about your article. Article is your friend, and the article doesn't give a rip what the declension of the word is that it's modifying. You've got the 24 forms of the article, and those are the forms that are used. They're going to agree with the noun they modify, the head noun, in case, number, and gender. They're not going to agree with them in declension because there is no third declension form of the article. It doesn't care. Where that's really nice is on some of these kind of bizarre third declension forms. See if there's an article in front of it. If there is, you should be able to parse the third declension noun form. Now, don't guess. You need to always figure out why this weird third declension form is the way it is, but the article will help you, and so that's really, really good. Time to learn the last two noun rules. Yay! Noun rule number 7 is called the square of stops. This is a really handy chart to have in your memory. It's going to help you with third declension nouns. It's going to really help you with verbs. In fact, it's going to help you a lot more with verbs than it does with nouns. So make sure you learn it. The chart that I've got on the video is a composite of several charts in the textbook, but it's kind of nice to have it all in one place. Let's talk about it. What's a square of stops? Well, it's called square because you have the square of the 9 consonants in the middle that are in yellow on the video. A stop is a classification of a consonant whose sound is produced by stopping or at least impeding the airflow. That's why it's called a stop. The air just doesn't pour out of your mouth like it does with a vowel, but it's to some degree or another, it's stopped. And they are the stops exist in certain patterns, and that's why it's so important to know this chart. The first pattern are called labials. The 3 labials are P, beta, and phi. In other words, those are 3 consonant sounds that you make by impeding, by stopping to some degree the airflow, but you stop them by using your lips. Now, these are the consonants that are hard for ventriloquists to say, but for most of us, we have to use our lips to say these things. So we say P, beta, or phi. We need our lips. Okay. The second category of stops are called velars. And velars are stops that produce the sound by pushing the tongue up against the soft palate. They're also called palatals because of that. The soft palate, the middle part of your mouth. And they are kappa, gamma, and he. Can you feel your tongue moving as it goes up there? The third category of stops are called dentals because you stop the sound by using your teeth, that your tongue is clicking up against your teeth. Now, it's not technically your teeth, it's clicking your alveolar ridge, the ridge behind your teeth. If your tongue is clicking your teeth, you probably need braces because you've been pushing your teeth out. But anyway, your dentals, sounds you make by using your teeth or the alveolar ridge, are tau, delta, theta. Okay, can you feel that? Okay. You've got to memorize them, first of all, that way. Labials, P, beta, phi. Velars, kappa, gamma, he. Dentals, tau, delta, theta. Now, I have silly mnemonics that I use for these. If you think it's too silly, then don't use it. But the way I memorize them, labials, the pie went by. Phew, okay? Velars, the cat at the gardener went. And dentals, the top of the door went thud. Okay, if that's silly, find your own way to memorize them. But there's thousands of students that learn them that way. Anyway, the final column on the right-hand side is what happens when any of these consonants are followed by a sigma. If a labial is followed by a sigma, it doesn't care whether it's a P, beta, or phi. It's going to be rewritten as a C. If a velar is followed by a sigma, it doesn't matter whether it's a kappa, gamma, or he. That velar, the velar plus sigma is going to be rewritten as a C. And if you have a dental, doesn't matter whether it's a tau, delta, or theta. If you have a dental that's followed by the sigma, the delta simply drops out, and all that you have is the sigma. Okay, so that's what that final column is about. Now let's look at the headers along the top. In the current printing of the book, I don't think these are actually in the book. What is the difference between a P and a beta and a phi? Well, the last ones are simple. They're called aspirates. You see how as you go down the column, we're doing the same thing to all the sounds. We're aspirating it. And P goes to f, and k goes to f, and t goes to th. Okay, it's like we're adding an H onto the end of the consonant. So the aspirates are straightforward. But what's the difference between a P and a beta? Well, put your fingers gently on your Adam's apple and say a P. Now say a B. P, B. You feel the difference? Yeah, your voice box vibrates when you say the beta. Same with K and G and T and D. All right? That's why they're called voiceless and voiced. Now, where have we seen this already at work? Yeah, we saw it in the nominative singular and the dative plural of stems ending in kappa, didn't we? Sark plus sigma goes to sarks in the nominative singular. Sark plus sigma iota in the dative plural goes to sarksi. So there's an example of this at work. Beta, gamma, and delta use your voice box. It's going to vibrate to help make the sound. And P, kappa, and tau are voiceless. The voice box doesn't vibrate to make the sounds. Okay, this is a really, really important chart, and it's gonna save you just gobs of memory work. Have you noticed by now that I don't like to memorize? Yeah, that's one of the consistent patterns in my life. If I can find a chart and a couple rules, my mind would much prefer to memorize that. So again, these are all these little clues that I'm trying to give you to keep your memory work down. This square stops is going to save you, especially in verbs, all kinds of problems. So make sure you memorize it left to right, memorize it top to bottom, and memorize what happens when you add sigmas, okay? Labials, P beta phi, velars, kappa gamma chi, dentals, tau delta theta. When you add sigmas to a labial, they become a psi, sigma to a velar becomes a xi, and sigma to a dental, the dental drops out, and then the columns are voiceless, voiced, and aspirates. Noun rule number 8. You've already seen this one. Noun rule number 8 is that a tau cannot stand at the end of a word, and so it drops off. So you have the stem anamat. No case ending is used in the nominative accusative singular. It's a neuter word. And so you go to anama. Okay? The tau comes back in the genitive, anamatas, dative, anamati. But it drops off when it's the last letter in the word. Okay, and we come now to pas. Pas is a really important word. It's a word that if you can understand all of its different forms, it means you have a pretty good handle on third and first declension words. But pas is also used as a paradigmatic form for participles in chapter 26 and following, and it's used a lot. And so if you've really got to get pas down, but you should be encouraged that if you can get pas down, then it's third declension is going to be straightforward. It's a word that means all, and you're going to memorize it as pas, pasa, pan. And you're going to memorize that the stem in the masculine and the neuter is pant. P alpha nu tau. Okay, so this is called a 3-1-3 adjective. The masculine follows the third declension, the feminine follows the first declension, and the neuter follows the third declension. Obviously, in the feminine, something has happened significantly different if the stem, in fact, is pant. Well, the stem in the feminine, this happens quite a bit with first declension stuff. The feminine also often reverts back to the first declension. So if you have pasa, it's pasa, pases, passe, pasan. That's a piece of cake. But what I'd like you to do is try to, without looking at the answers, what I'd like you to do is to figure out with me what are the masculine and the neuter forms, okay? Let's just try to figure it out. You can do this, okay? You can do this if you understand what I've been talking about so far. Let's look at the nominative singular. You're going to memorize it as pas. What's the case ending? Well, it's a sigma. But if I tell you that the stem is pant, what happened to the nu tau? Well, both the nu and the tau drop off before sigma, right? We saw that hint. And so pant goes to pas, piece of cake. When you get into the genitive singular, what's it going to be? Well, pantas, not a problem, right? Okay. Omicron sigma case ending, third declension form. It's a third declension stem. It ends in a consonant, right? Tau. What's going to happen in the dative singular? It's going to go to panti, right? And in the accusative singular, it's going to go to, what is it? Panta. Very good. So pas, pantas, panti, panta. That's a piece of cake, right? Okay, flip over to the neuter. If the stem is pant, what happens to neuters and third declensions? Well, by default, what happens? Well, there's no case ending used. What happens to that final tau? Goes away. So that's why we learned the form is pas, pasa, pan. Okay, the newest part of the stem, the tau's dropped off. There's no case ending. What's going to happen in the genitive and dative singulars? Same thing that happens with the masculines, right? That's the noun rule. So it's pon, pontos, ponti. And because it's a neuter, what's going to happen in the accusative singular? Same thing that happened in the nominative singular. Pon, pontos, ponti, pon. So you should have been, if you can follow that through, and I'm guessing that you can by now, you should be feeling pretty good about yourself. The feminine, as is often the case with third declension forms, is going to revert back to a first declension. I mean, it's often when you have masculine and neuter and third with adjectives, you're going to find that the feminine often goes to the first declension. And the stem in the first declension is passa, all right? So you just have to remember the rule in does the alpha go to an eta or not? Well, what's the preceding letter? Is it epsilon iota rho? No. So it goes to the eta. So it's passes, eta sigma, passe, eta iota subscript, and then back to alpha to passan. Okay, so there's your chart of pos in the singular. How'd you do? Make sure you understood what I went through. My guess is you probably do. Okay, let's do the same thing in the plural. And again, let's just start with pont and let's see what we can come up with. In the masculine, what's the nominative plural case ending? It's epsilon sigma. Is it going to go straight on the stem? Sure. You're going to get a pontes, piece of cake. What's going to be the genitive plural? Ponton. No surprise. What's going to happen in the dative plural? Well, whatever happened in the nominative singular is going to happen in the dative plural. The dative plural case ending is sigma iota with a new movable. What happened in the nominative singular? We got pos, right? Both the nu and the tau drop off. So the dative plural is posse with a new movable. And then what's the accusative plural? Well, case ending is alpha sigma, so it's pontos. Did you get that? Piece of cake. Let's flip over to the neuter column. What's the case ending? A neuter third declension, nominative plural. It's alpha. So you get ponta, okay? Then the genitive and dative are the same as the masculine, ponton, posse. And the accusative plural is the same as the nominative plural, ponta. All right? Go back to the feminine. It's the first declension, so it's not any trouble at all. Passai, passon, passais, passas. Okay, if you can get that, and you can understand why it's doing what it's doing, you're home free, okay? It's not that hard, is it? Right? You're home free. Now, I should say a couple things about pos, though. Pos is a little bit of a different word. It often functions as a noun, as a substantive. And so it's all the people, all the men, all the women, all the things, whatever. And in the singular, you can't really have all, so it's each or every in the singular. Just look at context. You're probably used to that by adjectives by now, aren't you? Just look at context and see what word you need to use if it's functioning as a noun. The other oddity about pos is if it's functioning as an adjective, it's in the predicate position. In other words, most adjectives, when they're functioning as adjectives, are in the attributive position. That means they're immediately preceded by the article, right? Well, pos and a few other words we're going to be learning a little bit later in another chapter are used in the predicate position when they're functioning adjectively. So there won't be the article ha in any form before pos, but it's still going to mean each, every, or all, and then whatever word it's modifying. We've seen 3 of these 4 categorizations of adjectives, so let me summarize them for you real briefly. Adjectives will fit in one of 4 basic categories. There are 2-1-2 adjectives like agathos, where the masculine is second declension, the feminine is first, the neuter is second declension. There are also 3-1-3 adjectives like we learned with pos, where the masculine and the neuter are third declension, the feminine is first. And we've also seen 2-2 adjectives, ionios, ionion. The masculine and feminine are second declension, and the neuter is second declension. And there's also a 3-3 kind of adjective, and tis is that kind of adjective, where the masculine and feminine are third declension, tis, and the neuter is also third declension. So those are the 4 categorization schemes for adjectives. We're going to hit a couple of uses of the article in this chapter I need to give you a heads up on. One is a review, one is brand new. The word in Greek that we call the article ha is not actually the article. Its use in Greek is much, much larger than the English word the. The word ha is categorized as a weak demonstrative. And that's why we can translate ha other than with the English word the. And you're just going to have to wait for context to decide when it has to be translated. It'll be pretty straightforward. You won't be surprised when you see it. Sometimes you're going to be able to translate ha in any of its forms as that. Sometimes you're going to be able to translate it as a relative pronoun, who. But there's one specific situation where you can translate ha as a personal pronoun, as he. And that is when you have ha de. When you have the article ha followed by the postpositive de. When you see ha de, it almost always means but he. Okay, so that's just one of the clues. Ha de, the word ha is functioning as a personal pronoun, and you translate it as but he. And by way of review, let me remind you, and we learned this several chapters back, that sometimes you can have an article in front of a prepositional phrase. Remember that? And the article is substantivizing the prepositional phrase. It's making it function as a substantive idea, as a noun idea. And so, for example, if you had an expression, tois inte oikia, the in the house, that's a noun idea. And you go, well, it'd be those who are in the house, because tois is plural, so you'd say those. If it were singular, you'd say the one who or he who is in the house, something like that. But remember, you can have the article in front of the prepositional phrase, and it will turn the whole prepositional phrase into a noun, and you can be pretty flexible in your translations. So what have we learned in chapter 10? Well, we've learned third declension. And third declension stems are stems that end in a consonant, and they will take third declension case endings. There are 3 new case endings for third declensions and a few changes, but if you've learned the true case endings, it shouldn't be a real problem. When you memorize a third declension word, you always memorize its genitive singular form, and from that you can see what its stem is by dropping off the os, and you always memorize it as all nouns with the article, so you can tell what its gender is. We're going to memorize the master case ending chart perfectly. We're going to learn the square of stops. The labials are the p, beta, phi that go to psi when followed by a sigma. The velars are kappa, gamma, chi that go to xi. And dentals are tau, delta, theta that go to a simple sigma when followed by a sigma. We learned rule 8, that a tau cannot stand at the end of a word and it's going to drop off. We learned 4 different categories of adjectives. We learned that ha can be translated as something other than the, and the expression ha de most likely means but he. And we memorized pas, the paradigmatic form that's so important to know for 313 constructions. So how are you doing? That was a pretty long chapter, wasn't it? Yeah, it's one of the longest ones in the book after chapter 6. You feel like you're in the fog? Okay, look back several chapters. Nominative, genitive, dative, accusative, piece of cake. Prepositions, piece of cake, right? So the fog's just moving with you. It's okay. But you need to understand that chapter 10 is a watershed chapter in the book. You now know all 3 declensions. So there isn't a 4th declension. There's only 3. So you know all the declensions. You know actually almost all of the noun forms in the entire Bible. And so not a whole lot more to learn. And the next 4 chapters are really pretty simple, okay? This is the last of the hard stuff, and we're going to breeze through the next 4 chapters and then start verbs. So the fog's with you. Not too badly, I hope, though. And just do your memory work and close up your grammar and do your workbook. Hagios, Hagia, Hagion. As an adjective, holy. As a plural noun, saints. If. A may, except if not. Hace, mia, hen. 1. A day, now, already. Anima, anamatas, ta. Name, reputation. Udes, udemia, uden. No one, none, nothing. Pas, pasa, pan. In the singular, each, every. In the plural, all. Peri, with the genitive, concerning, about. With the accusative, around. Sarx, sarkos, hay. Flesh, body. Soon, with the dative, with. Soma, somatas, ta. Body. Teknon, teknu, ta. Child, descendant. Tis, ti, with the accent. Who, what, which, why. Tis, ti, without an accent. Someone, something, a certain one, a certain thing, anyone, anything.